Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hello.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We post new videos. Latest video is a video about Alien Isolation. If you haven't watched that, go watch it. Working on a new review right now that I'll talk about here in a little bit about a game called Paradise Lost, which is heavily influenced by the poem Paradise Lost by John Milton. Is that his name? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yes, John Milton.
Anyway, so I'll talk about that in a little bit. And I've got a project that I've started on that I'm going to talk about a little bit as well. But before we get into any of that, we'll start with Connor. Start with you. What have you been playing?
Not a whole lot. Since we last had a podcast, I was in Arizona getting vaccinated.
Hooray.
Yay. And I didn't bring, my computer with me because I was just going to be down for a couple days. And then I got back to California and I slept for about a year. And so I've just done a little bit of Civilization 6 on stream on twitch.com/CocoDoesAStream, link in the description, and Troy Total War today.
Okay, so go back to the classics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any further thoughts about Troy or any of those games that you would like to share?
I think I'll have like a more detailed, nuanced opinion once I can replay, not replay, but once like the Rome Total War Remaster comes out and I can get a more updated version of an old game.
Okay, and compare it and contrast it with the newer stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and you told me before the podcast that the remake it's going to stay pretty true to the original game, right? Which
yes,
you would hope most remakes do.
With the remaster, there's a menu that you can bring up and pick and choose if you want specific features in or out of the game, and you can go full just HD remake. It's the code from Rome Total War brought over, visual updates, have fun. And then there's quality of life improvements and everything that you can take on, and balance and other tweaks to make the game more modern, air quotes.
It's kind of interesting that you can tick those on and off.
Yeah.
Like if you want the entire experience of both, I forget which Metal Gear Solid it was, but one of the Metal Gear Solids, I think it was the first one and the second one. Richard, by the time the second Metal Gear Solid came out, did DualShock controllers have analog sticks on them?
Yes.
Okay. I knew you would know that off the top of my head because I don't. But anyway,
Tyler, DualShocks came out in 1998, so yeah. That's actually true. Yes.
In the first one, in the first game, you had to use because in the first game, the first PlayStation did not have.
Yeah.
Correct. It did not have analog sticks, so you had to use the D-pad. And I remember when I played through not HD remake, but the re-release for the PS3 that came with the other HD remakes, you had to go into the PlayStation settings and change the game settings from D-pad to analog stick. I think you could do that. But anyway, sorry. The point I was trying to make was it's like if you wanted to use the D-pad to move in the original Metal Gear, even with the updated versions, it's like you could to really experience the full thing. Anyway, I'm sorry, Connor. Anything else you'd like to say?
Oh, nope.
Richard, what you been playing?
Oh man, I've been bouncing around with a lot of stuff. I'm still going through the path list. I kind of found a groove with that game and how to approach each section that you're given. And the game has kind of gotten a lot more streamlined I know what my objectives are. I know how to get there. I know what to look for. So it's making the game a bit of a breeze. And I don't mean that negatively. I just mean that as the flow of the game goes on, I know how to hit it, and it's very satisfying. Still gonna write something on it, but for now, I'll talk about a little bit about things I forget when it comes to having a PS5. And I'm not used to fast loading times. I'm very much used to sitting there and, okay, we're loading, look at my phone a little bit, and it's honestly like I'll look at my phone for a quick second and oh, whoops, okay, I'm already like playing. And it's great, it's wonderful. There are also some negatives, maybe. I don't know if it was, I was playing the Pathless, I was doing a boss fight, and I don't know if this is a glitch I encountered or if it was something that just wasn't developed correctly inside of the game. But when you pull your bowstring in the Pathless, you feel very slight resistance to it. And when your mark, whatever you're aiming at, it will have a diamond that fills up. And when it hits full, you will get kind of like a force feedback on your trigger. And when I was fighting a boss, I was not getting that force feedback. And the amount of time I was playing the game had gotten me used to that feeling on my hands. So in this boss battle, I was thrown off, and I was getting hit a lot, and I died a couple times because now my trigger to know when to let go of my bowstring wasn't there anymore. And I don't know if that was because of something that was going on in the boss fight, which I won't talk about, or if it was because there was too much intense things going on. So like maybe the development like just kind of overlooked putting that feeling there.
Interesting.
But I kind of felt like it was a boon in an instance, because already with the small amount of time I've had the PS5, I have already been trained to use the controller's feeling to react to how I'm playing. And so when it's not there, it's like, what the hell am I doing with my controller? So I thought that was both very interesting and very scary, because I kind of don't want to. It's very helpful to have those feelings in your controller, but if any of that goes out, it's like I said, you'll just get thrown off. And I don't want games to like lean on that too heavily, if that makes sense. But like I talked about when I first got the PS5 in general, it all depends on how the developers use it. And honestly, with the Pathless, that's the only thing it's used for, is it's the bowstring. So there are those things. Besides Pathless and the PS5, I hopped on my Xbox One a little bit, and I've been playing some older stuff. I'm kind of running through Resident Evil 2 again, but with like infinite everything on, so I'm just kind of like running through and blasting, just because I get those spouts of I just want to play something to kind of like jump into and run around, and I'm not really exploring or doing anything. I'm just running straight through the game, just and so that gets a bit fun. And then I probably will move to the Hitman games shortly.
Nice.
I played through the first 2 levels of Hitman 1, and it was awesome, and it was the most I've ever focused on a stealth game, because I do get impatient with stealth as time goes on. But Hitman 1 of the new trilogy really got me in that loop of like, I got to play this level again. Like, how many times can I kill this guy or kill these people? And so I have 1 and 2, and then by the time I get to 3, hopefully it'll be cheaper. It's gone on sale plenty of times. But that's all I've been doing.
Okie dokie. All right, so the game Paradise Lost is about a 12-year-old boy who, it's a narrative driven. You're narrative driven, not even a puzzle game. Just, I hate the term walking simulator, because I think it conveys like a certain dislike of the genre.
Terrible phrase.
But like narrative driven doesn't convey Like how, like you could argue Talos Principle is narrative driven, you know? So I don't know what the,
How about an interactive experience?
that, I mean, I we'll save the conversation for another time.
A graphical novel, if you will.
But interactive experience,
that.
as ambiguous as interactive experience is, it's definitely better than walking simulator. But anyway, so that's Paradise Lost, and it's about a 12-year-old boy who discovers a Nazi bunker. It's set in the 1960s, and it's an alternate history where the United States remained neutral during World War II, and essentially Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union just sort of beat the shit out of each other for like 20 years. And then the Nazis, in an attempt to end the war, selected a group of, as you imagine a fascist regime would do, selected a group of people they ordained were fitting and put them into this massive bunker, and then essentially just bombed the shit out of the Soviet Union and out of... It's a little unclear about like how the war developed, because the game is set. You find coordinates for where specifically the bunker is, and the coordinates are in Poland. So like it doesn't tell you what happened or if like the lead up to the war was the same or whatever, or how the war progressed. But anyway, but it hints that nuclear winter has happened, that all these bombs dropped and the Nazis and the Soviets both developed nuclear bombs and they dropped it on each other, and that basically ended the war. So this kid who is surviving in a separate bunker goes to look for his father, who was a scientist in this bunker. And so you go through this bunker, and it's a story about him looking for his father and stuff like that. It's really... I have to unpack a little bit of my thoughts. I've played through it once, and then I'm playing through it again. A lot of games, I think a lot of games, and really a lot of like media, which is another word that means nothing. The Nazis are like not cartoonish, but they're just villains, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't delve into what fascism is and what they believed, right? So like in Indiana Jones, when Indiana Jones punches a Nazi, the Nazi is a bad guy in the same sense that, like, you know, in the Batman movies, one of Joker's henchmen is a bad guy, right? But they don't delve into like the horrible ideology or the thought process or lack thereof behind fascism. But in this game, you sort of delve into that a little bit. Because you read like paper slips about who they wanted to put in the bunker and what their goal was and stuff like that. So it raised a red flag because the game's called Paradise Lost, and then you find a Nazi bunker that has been deserted, and it's like, what exactly is lost here? But there's a twist as you go down into the bunker that changes things up. So I've struggled with, like, I know in certain countries Nazi iconography it's viewed a different way, because people have different histories. You know, here in America it wasn't like we were taken over or invaded or anything like that, but other countries were, so they view it differently. So this is, I think it's a Polish development team, so I'm not really... You know, how much of the iconography is sensationalist versus how much of it is accurate, for lack of a better word, because the Nazis were bad shit crazy. So like everything had to have a swastika on it, you know, because it was all about how super duper they were and bullshit like that. So I have to wrap my head around that a little bit more. I did enjoy the game as I finished it, because I thought there was some metaphor and it was thought-provoking in a lot of ways. And like I said, it provided a rounded image of fascist Nazi, of fascist Germany, Nazi Germany, whatever, that I think like a lot of games don't do a good job with. Like instead it's sort of just, and I don't know if it's necessarily something they have to do. When I say they, I just mean other games or whatever. Like, I don't think every Indiana Jones movie needs to have a part where Harrison Ford is like, but first, kids, let me tell you. So I don't know. But I have to wrap my head around the game a little bit more, and I'm going to make a review. It's not a very long game. It's 5 to 6 hours. It's very detailed. It is excruciatingly detailed. There are a lot of really cool, as you go through the bunker, it's like you learn a lot about the bunker through notes and stuff. And every room is different. They do a good job of like changing up the environments, but it is unsettling because the bunker was made by the Nazis, right? So you're walking through a place that is made to glorify that. And I think the game is trying to show the ugliness of it, right? But you're walking through a place that was made to glorify it. And I think that's a really tough balance to strike. And I really don't know if the game did it well or not yet. I'm going to play through it again to really wrap my head around it. But there is a big twist as you get later on into the game that's like, okay, this is starting to make more sense. Anyway, besides that, I've started my project on Red Dead Redemption, which is going to be a very long project because there's some stuff I want to read, and I want to play through the first and the second game. And all I wanted to say was that I thought Red Dead Redemption is a very good game. It's very fun. The first one, but the second one's definitely better. I think John is a better written character in the second Red Dead Redemption. In the first Red Dead Redemption, he's an interesting character, but I think you can see sort of, and I don't know, I don't think, I don't remember off the top of my head if the Hauser brothers or somebody else who wrote the first Red Dead Redemption and the second Red Dead Redemption also wrote GTA 5 or whatever. But you can see Rockstar's progression, right? Because Rockstar's always had really verbal characters. They've always had a lot of lines and a lot of like expressions and stuff. But between the first Red Dead, the second Red Dead, and like GTA 5 in the middle, and LA Noire, you can see how sort of the studio, and I know there were different studios at work, but you can see how their sort of progression came about with writing more complex characters. And another thing that I realized while playing Red Dead Redemption was, I think LA Noire, and this may be a byproduct of who wrote LA Noire, because I don't know off the top of my head who wrote it or the script or remember who specifically developed it. But LA Noire's characters are like the straightest characters in really all of Rockstar's like lore. And what I mean by that is they're not characters in Red Dead and GTA. So many of them have like a weirdness about them. They're all odd or a little messed up, or they're super expressive, or they're silly, right? And this,
well, they're true. I mean, they're basically human.
Yeah, but I think they're a little exaggerated though in some sense.
Sure, but like in LA Noire, to me, they're caricatures. Like they were supposed to be exactly how like that, we see it now from this day and age, at least in my opinion.
And I've only played through LA Noire once, so I may have to play through it again to remember it well. But I remember the characters in LA Noire being, for lack of a better term, like realistic, right? It's like the difference between, I don't know, like a Quentin Tarantino movie and like a Steven Spielberg movie. Like when you think about Saving Private Ryan, you don't think, oh, this cast of silly characters. But in like a Quentin Tarantino, like in Inglourious Bastards, it's like they're all kind of, there's like this weird dark humor about it all. Like I think that's the difference between GTA, Red Dead, and then like LA Noire. But anyway, it's just a thought, and it may be completely incorrect because I've only played through LA Noire once, but I really enjoyed it. Anyway, anything we would like to say before?
Just that LA Noire was written by Brendan McNamara.
It was also developed by Team Bondi. Rockstar just published.
He was the writer and director of the game.
That name seems really familiar. Yeah, that's what I suspected because I remember it being just really different, right? Just the way the characters were and whatnot. But anyway, I would love to play through LA Noire again, because I really liked LA Noire. The ending was weird, and it went sort of a strange direction. But man, it's still like the investigations and stuff like that I always thought were really freaking cool.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of games still take inspiration from that investigation style as well.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because it's sort of been memeified, because there is some like funny memey things about it.
Yeah.
But I do think it was a really good game, or at least I really enjoyed it.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast, and they can be found right beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you are feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
Twitch will now act on serious offenses that happen off-platform. This was announced by the company under its current/former guidelines, I think a little bit of both. Twitch would, in some serious cases, take action against off-service hateful conduct or harassment when directed at the Twitch community. The new guidelines now say that Twitch may take action against serious offenses that happen completely off Twitch. So if a Twitch streamer is mean to somebody on social media, well, mean is a light term, is abusive towards somebody on like Twitter or Discord, they could have action taken against them against their Twitter. They didn't specify what specifically, at least in the portions I read, but actions against them nonetheless. So serious offenses include deadly violence, terrorism, leadership or membership in a hate group, sexual exploitation of children, other really serious stuff that's not hard to imagine. Twitch has hired an unnamed third-party law firm to support their internal team with investigations. Regarding concerns of censorship, Twitch COO Sarah Clemens told Wired, quote, "These are not behaviors which, in my mind, would enter the censorship realm of conversation that you've seen around services lately. This is about removing the harmful and toxic elements of society who are potentially trying to use services to harass people." And I think it's important that we start with these behaviors given the level of harm that they can create, end quote. So this is more than just... This is a conversation about like moderation, right? And we've had this discussion before, similar discussions regarding Steam and moderation, that sort of bleeds into like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and how they moderate their services and what, legally what they're able to allow on their service and what they're able to, how they're able to curtail speech, right? Or censor speech. So it's a gigantic conversation. Do you guys, I'll let you guys go first, because I do have some thoughts, but go ahead.
Always a knee-jerk reaction, but I reading the story, I did want to retort that it's like, I have been, and this is what I'm going to say next is absolutely not to excuse any of the things that we're talking about here, exploitation, racism, sexism, stuff like that. But I've always had that, like, I remember in school, we were told that, if a teacher caught you doing something like outside of school, they can get you in trouble, like, just by seeing you do something outside of school. And I thought, well, I'm not in school. Like, why am I, like, why are you going to punish me? I'm not in school. Like, this is stupid. So I wanted to retort by saying, like, well, if I say something completely outside of Twitch, like, I'm not on Twitch, why are you going to punish me for that? We're in a different era now, and Twitch streamers are now online personalities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? You're not off work, ever. You're always working now, whether you like it or not. On Twitter, on Facebook, on Twitch, you are all in the same amalgamous, webbing of social media. And so the only way that you're truly not working is if you're not using it whatsoever. So I think this makes sense, and of course, especially with how fast information can get to people, and we've already seen how younger generations are being influenced, both good and bad, by all these sides. I think it's something that has to be regulated before anything can happen. So I think this is something that is interesting, and it all depends on how they attack the topic. But this is really really wild, especially that they got a separate team, a third-party team to help with this.
So I understand if there's skepticism behind it. Richard, you sounded a little skeptical, and I feel like I'm in the same boat with you.
Sure.
Because it's Twitch.
Yeah.
And I think that's enough said. Like, if this were YouTube, I would feel just as skeptical, because they have their own things to cover and their own goals with certain things. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think YouTube is out to, get Democrats controlling the government and create a socialist utopia or anything like that. I do think they can be incompetent, and I do think that their highest priority is making as much money as possible. So because you have conflicting goals, be safe but make money, what happens is you create environments that are nonsensical and don't make any sense. But I understand skepticism, because when any of these platforms try to do gigantic, it may be inaccurate to say that this is gigantic, because it's not like they didn't specify that they were going to start banning people left and right every day or anything like that. But it's certainly a gigantic conversation, and it's complicated. And there's a lot of power there, because, Twitch essentially holds a monopoly. YouTube more so holds a monopoly. Facebook and Twitter hold monopolies, and where that line is a conversation that is bigger than we can discuss on this podcast in a single sitting. But at the same time, I think companies need to do something. I don't think the option is to sit back and just let anyone use your platform for whatever reason, right? So there has to be something there. There has to be some form of and to this point, you can't, if something happens on Discord and that person has a prolific following on Twitch, and that what they did on Discord will be carried over to Twitch in one way or another, or will affect Twitch somehow, because billions of people use Twitch and Discord and other services, so it's not like these things stay contained in one area. I feel like you'd have to react to that too. It would be dumb to see something go down on separate social media and know that these people also have followings on Twitch or whatever, and not expect it to bleed into your service, right? That would be silly to think. I think this is the right thing to do. Do I trust gigantic tech companies in implementing it correctly? I'm highly skeptical. And if this were YouTube, I would be saying, I only mention YouTube as an example because I'm more familiar with how YouTube handles things and whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's, just to put a bow on my entire ramble here, I think it's something that needs to happen, but I am understandably skeptical, because monolithic corporations, I think, haven't done a great job at this thus far. Anyway, Connor, where do you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it's just a point of just something she brought up, Sarah Clemens, with entering the realm of censorship. If you hear, hey, we're gonna start taking serious actions against people who do things like deadly violence, terrorism, leadership or membership of hate groups, sexual exploitation of children, etc., and your first thought is, it kind of sounds like censorship. you probably need to readdress your priorities. Nothing in there is like of the things listed falls under censorship. In fact, that falls away from freedom of speech. Hate speech and stuff like that doesn't go under, isn't protected by the freedom or by.
Well, I think federally it is, right? That's why West Barrel Baptist Church can do what they can do, but
federally, yes.
But you're
by
correct.
The
you're
government,
correct, yeah.
Corporation, 100% legal and able to do so. That is well within their right to do so. But again, these things, if you see these come up as points of issue for a company not wanting to be associated with them, and that's a red flag for you, you need to look in the mirror.
Yeah, and it sounds like this isn't animated, right? Which thank God. But I think part of the backlash might be that like YouTube will demonetize. Like if you make a video about the Civil War and you have the Confederate flag, or for example, one YouTuber I really like, I'm forgetting his name, I'm blanking on his name. He's a composer, he does music. Damn it. I'll have to look it up here in a second. Anyway, he did a video about Soviet era classical music, which was really interesting, but he couldn't say the name Stalin because he knew if he said Stalin he would get demonetized. So throughout the video he just does bleeps where he talks about Stalin, which is ridiculous because it's this great historical documentary about classical music and how it was used as like a protest to Soviet era policy back in the day, but he couldn't use Stalin, right? As if
we're gonna have to edit this podcast so we don't get demonetized.
But the point is, because it's automated, right? It catches things that it shouldn't catch. So you do this. What's the term? Wide net, right? Wide net fishing or whatever. Which some people may argue it does more good than it does harm, but the harm it does is really annoying. And I feel like there has to be ways of improving that. Anyway, anything else we would like to say before we move on here?
No.
Sony's obsession with Blockbusters is stirring unrest in the PlayStation empire. This is a story by Bloomberg's Jason Schreier. I almost got journalists mixed up. I was about to say Bloomberg's Cecilia Schreier. Is like, whoa. Bloomberg's Jason Schreier. There's lots of really interesting tidbits in this, so we can't get to everything. I tried to break down the two biggest like anecdotes from it to talk about. So it focuses on mainly Sony's Visual Arts Service Group, which is a team that helps finish PlayStation games like Spider-Man and Uncharted. Well, about 3 years ago, a guy by the name of Michael Mumbauer, who was the founder of Visual Services Group, recruited about 30 devs, and they wanted to work on their own project, which became a remake of The Last of Us. Sony really never acknowledged this group's existence or gave them funding or support to finish the project. Sony did, however, eventually move The Last of Us remake they were working on to Naughty Dog, and the group's leadership disbanded, including Mumbauer, because they were sort of deflated, right? Because the thing that they started sort of got moved to a different company. Another of these stories is of Sony Bend, which is the developer in Oregon that made Days Gone. Sony Bend wanted to do a sequel, but Sony didn't see a sequel as viable because while Days Gone was profitable, its development had been lengthy, and the critical response was mixed. So instead, Sony Bend was split into two teams, one to help Naughty Dog on a multiplayer game, and the other to work on a new Uncharted game with supervision from Naughty Dog. And there are developers at Sony Bend who are afraid that they'll just be absorbed into Naughty Dog and just become a part of Naughty Dog. Reading straight from the story, quote, Sony owns about a dozen studios across the world, but in recent years it has prioritized games made by its most successful developers. Studios such as Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games spend tens of millions of dollars to make games with the expectation that the investments will pay off exponentially, and they usually do. Hits including 2018's God of War and 2020's The Last of Us Part 2 are exclusive to PlayStation consoles, helping sell some 114 million of PS4. Sony's focus on exclusive blockbusters has come at the expense of niche teams and studios within the PlayStation organization, leading to high turnover and less choice for players. End quote. So I have a lot of thoughts here, and I don't want to take the floor for too long, so you guys can go ahead and go first again.
I don't want to say this is old news, but this is, I mean, some of this information, like with the, what are they called? Sony Visual Arts Service Group not getting funding, and then that project being shifted over to Naughty Dog, Sony Bend with the sequel getting denied, all that. That all is relatively new information for me, at least. But with Sony focusing on, you know, their big hitters pushing out their franchise games, that's Sony. That's just what Sony does. That's what you can expect when a new Sony console comes out, is they're going to have their big blockbuster games. That's been their thing for a decade now. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure on the stirring unrest in the PlayStation empire, because or at least if I'm just not understanding what's going on in this article, but this just seems like business as usual.
Well, I think so. So on one hand, yes, because people leave the industry all the time because of stuff that happens. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I think the one reason I really like this story is because it gives us an insight into sort of this isn't a huge story about abuse and crunch and that has crazy anecdotes and really long quotes about, 100-hour work weeks or anything like that. But it does, I think, sort of expose the politics behind some of the decision making. Michael Mumbauer is somebody who a story like this is told a lot. Like, Visual Art Studio was started in 2007, so this is a veteran of the industry, a veteran of Sony, and has worked on a lot of different Sony games because they've helped finish different stuff. And now he's left Sony, not because they hated Sony or because work there sucked or anything. Well, I guess at the end that's what it was. But because they started work on a project and Sony sort of would more prioritize, instead of letting them do their own thing, would shifted that to Naughty Dog. I do think I wonder if this is sustainable, because while Sony maybe has done this for, let's say, the past 10 years, like, for the past 10 years, they've also had really good games, right? And it's not like every single game. Naughty Dog is going to put out a bad game eventually, right? Sucker Punch put out... Infamous Second Son, it wasn't like everyone thought Infamous Second Son was fantastic. At least my memory of it was that is sort of a lukewarm reception. And Ghost of Tsushima was the one that really blew people away. With Guerrilla Games... Killzone Shadowfall they made Killzone Shadowfall, right? Guerrilla Games?
Yeah, I think they did.
Yeah, Killzone Shadowfall was horrible. Looked great. Great visuals.
Most of the Killzone games have been.
Yeah, you could argue that too. That most
they're
of
not
the
bad, but they're definitely just not memorable.
And Guerrilla's best game was Horizon Zero Dawn. So getting back to my point here. Like, I wonder if this is sustainable, sort of coalescing these studios or whatever, because eventually there's going to be one that doesn't pan out, right? Mm-hmm. And when that happens, you have to wonder how the narrative changes, like, because then there's going to be like, YouTube videos, the death of Sony and stuff like that, because like one game isn't great. But the thing is, like, shareholders see that and executives see that, and they freak out and make stupid decisions. And so instead of like righting the ship or letting Sony Bend sort of do their idea for a sequel or work on something else, they put all their eggs into a few baskets, and if those baskets don't work out, then all of a sudden your strategy isn't working, and who knows where you go from there. So I think that's the point. And yeah, Sony, I think Sony has, in the past 10 years, I don't know if there's ever, or the past 5 years, I don't know if there's ever been a console with that many good exclusives, like, in that short amount of time. Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Last of Us Part 2, Spider-Man. Dreams is one a lot of people like. Well, that doesn't count because it wasn't like that. It was a huge blockbuster. But anyway, that's a game a year that Sony put out that was a blockbuster title, and that's just not gonna. It's just you're not. Tom Brady's the only person who wins the Super Bowl every year. Other than that, no athlete and no sport, no company is going to win the game or sell the most things every year. So when you get on a hot streak, you have to understand that you're going to revert back to the mean. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to. That was part of my thoughts because I find this story really fascinating. Richard, I know you probably have some thoughts, so go ahead. Please shut me up.
I just don't know where to start with all this. I guess I'll first start with like, why not? Oh my God. I feel just from outside looking in, it's so obvious to take your teams that are working on different stuff and just let them work on different things.
That's what, yeah.
And like, for instance, this is actually kind of exciting, but a bit disappointing that Sony Bend was split into two teams to work on a Naughty Dog multiplayer game, which I guess we'll see what that happens. But the other part to work on an Uncharted game, because their Uncharted game, Golden Abyss for the Vita, was very good, because they're the ones who did that game.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, Sony Bend did that game, and of course they did Days Gone afterwards, which I still have yet to play, but I'm not very interested in it. But why not have them just focus on a new? We could get another game from Naughty Dog and an Uncharted game like in 1 year. Like if we wanted to do that doubles up your profits. It seems very obvious to do that, but we have someone who I completely forgot he's running Sony now,
Jim Ryan.
Jim Ryan, whatever.
Yeah.
He seems like the guy who only has dollar signs in his eyes. He doesn't he doesn't actually care like Sean Layden or oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot his name. I loved him too. Who came before Sean Layden. And we know this from his interviews that he's done in the past. The same guy who said that nobody cares about old games and they don't want to play them is now remaking an 8-year-old game, is now wanting a part of the company to remake an 8-year-old game, which got a remaster 5 years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago.
And so it's a bit baffling. Yes, people will buy it, I'm sure, but you're wasting your resources to do something like this.
Just to hold that thought for a second, because I think, and I didn't say this, but in the story, Schreier talks about the upcoming HBO series. So I think there was some corporate synergy there, right? That you remake the Last of Us game and then you have sort of the HBO series come out right around the same time or something like that.
Or you can make a completely new chapter in The Last of Us.
You could do that as well. You could do that as well. Not that I necessarily agree with that, but anyway, I was just trying to back you up.
If they remake this Last of Us game, but have like Pedro Pascal and the other actress like as Ellie and to make it. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
I agree with you though, Tyler. Like I agree with you in one aspect is that these things plateau. They don't keep going up and up and forever. They plateau, and then eventually,
unless your name's Tom Brady.
The perfect example is the God of War series. Like the God of War series, up and up and up for upwards of 10 years, and then God of War Ascension hit, and it plateaued and it dropped off immediately because people got tired of it because it was the same thing over and over. 11 years, what is that? I think 11 years. And God of War, comes out, completely changes everything, and you're good again. And I agree with you on that. I also do believe that it could potentially keep going up and up because every year you have more people being born, more people becoming of age, getting money, wanting to play newer things and stuff like that. So you do have the potential of growing your audience consistently. But I think that if you're going to rest your laurels on creating a blockbuster every year, yeah, you're going to get something that doesn't end up good, or something that's going to have troubles. I mean, actually, a good example would probably be Drive Club. Was the launch game for PS4. It was supposed to be a launch game for PS4 on PlayStation Plus.
Oh wow.
That was Sony developed. Well, not Sony developed, but they put a lot of money into that game, and it didn't come out till I think over a half year later, and it was still not good. So you have the risk of giving a game or having a company make a game that just can't do it, and so you either lose your money or release a half-baked game.
Mm-hmm.
And that may have been their thought process behind.
Definitely.
That may have been their thought process behind The Last of Us remake.
But yeah, there's a lot of info here and a lot to discuss as well.
Yeah, and
that I don't think we can get to.
It's also strange to me that Sony wouldn't want a Days Gone 2. Like, I haven't played it myself, but I know that the critical consensus was mixed. I know some people really liked it. Some people thought it was like okay, but I know it was financially successful, and to me, like that's my bar for like whether or not something should get a sequel. Let me rephrase that. In my straw man video game executive that I have in my head,
business tuxedo Tyler,
J. Jonah Jameson, I want Spider-Man. Like, if I don't see like
Sony's got him.
I understand that the first they said that the first Days Gone had lengthy development, but at the same time, can't Sony afford that? Like, isn't that something they could do because you have Naughty Dog and you have God of War Ragnarok and you have Horizon Zero Dawn 2 coming out soon and you have Ghost of Tsushima 2, which, I mean, that has to happen. Like, in no way in hell could that not happen. Especially with it setting itself up for a sequel, historically speaking.
Yeah.
I just found that really strange because, the last thing that executives care about is whether or not people like a game. You couldn't give a shit about that. If the game sells, like, that's what matters. And so I don't see why you don't just let
I don't know.
Sony go with it. And again, like now, and the problem is, and I want to emphasize this because we're talking a couple different perspectives here, but you had talent leave the studio because they were working on a project and Sony decided to consolidate. And now that talent said, well, shit, I don't want to do this. This was the project that I was working on. So now I'm going to leave. And if you do that with Bend, then it's like you have more talent that leaves, and that happens all across the studio. I mean, all across the industry, and that sucks because you have people that have ideas for projects, but the prioritization is not on the projects; it's on this other thing of hitting blockbusters. But yeah, I mean, I really like that you said plateau because it's right. I hope to God of War Ragnarok is amazing, but it might not be, and I hope to God that the next Horizon Zero Dawn blows my socks off. But it might just be okay. It might be bad. But you can't plan for every single game being fantastic. And the thing that annoys me is I know, like, the straw man executive in my head does not see that plateau, right? Does not think like that, right? the straw man guy, the straw man executive in my head, if he sees a player hit a home run, it's like, well, he must hit a home run every single time he's up to bat. They would be terrible at managing baseball players. Because success has to happen every single time, or else your entire business model needs to be restructured, which is just, it's not true. So I don't think I'm being facetious or exaggerating here, like, because I think that's how a lot of the industry operates. But yeah, at the same time, a really good story, I think. And yeah, I don't know, man. Do you guys get the same sense that, like, I'm sure Jim Ryan is a really good guy, great husband, great father, but at the same time, it's just like, I'm not comfortable with you the same way I was comfortable with Sean Lyman, you know? Like, for whatever reason, whatever dumb, like, human reason I have in my brain for that, because I'm sure he's a perfectly fine human being, but
Sure.
leading Sony.
We've talked about him plenty of times before in the past 2 years. I mean, and we know enough through what he tells reporters or journalists that he has a certain viewpoint on how the company probably should be run. And we know that there are tons of people in positions of power who think they know what's best for the company. And now he is in that position of power. And it seems like this. All right, Days Gone made money, but did it win awards? Did it win awards like Ghost of Tsushima did? Spider-Man?
No.
You know, Last of Us 2?
Not that I remember.
Right. So is this guy only, like, if he wants to make blockbusters just like those games, is he somebody who just wants the clout rather than the profits?
That would be interesting, because that's not at all how I picture executives.
Right. But if he can sit there after his tenure and be like, look what I did, you know, like, look at the games that were made under my supervision, you know, I think that could be important to him, because there are people who love to have their egos inflated. Yeah,
that's interesting.
And he could just be one of those guys who is in that position now.
And you know what? If in 5 years we look back at 5 more years where Sony was putting out a blockbuster hit every single year, then good on them.
Sure.
But if not, I think we should shift our eyes to Jim Ryan, and not like, well, Naughty Dog, you fucked it up. Like, no. Like, they're allowed to strike out every now and then, and they haven't in a really long time, you know? But they're allowed to. Same with the next God of War. Like, if it's not that great, it's not the end of the world. You hope the next one's better, but it is not an indictment on Cory Barlog or anything like that, you know? Assuming he's the creative director on the next one.
He's not. Yeah, no, he left.
Okay, there you go. I did not know that. Okay.
I hope God of War Ragnarok is the end of the world.
It's in the name.
Yeah. But just a couple things. One, Tyler, I think you've got a fairly cartoony imagining of CEOs, because you're not going to become the head of one of the most profitable, largest entertainment companies in the world and not be able to think ahead about business.
Well, you say that.
Well, you kind of, you know, I'm giving him a little bit more faith than you are, because of, you know, the company he works for. They want to be profitable. They want someone that knows what they're doing. And if we look at, like, and it's interesting you say 5 years. You've said it a lot, and I was looking this up because Richard brought up God of War Ascension. There was 5 years between Ascension and God of War 2018. And Sony is getting enough of these massive blockbuster franchises that they can have a game that starts to plateau, shelve it for a few years, push out the other ones, let the hype around the game, you know, starting to peter off, die down, push it out again. People will pick it back up, and it will probably be for the better. And they can cycle this, and it becomes a business model of quality over quantity. They have 8 games that they cycle through, 8 franchises that they just make these really awesome cinematic games, and they just keep those going and they just bank off of, being able to slot a new one in every now and then, like your Ghost of Tsushima. No one expected that game to be as amazing as it was. No one, thought 5 years ago, oh, we're going to have a real great samurai game coming out soon. No, it just came out of nowhere and killed it. So you're able to do a quality over quantity because you're getting new people in all the time, and you can get these new IPs in that can slowly fade out the old ones, and then you get these new ones, and you just keep repeating that cycle, and it works. It just works.
I guess we'll have to see. Are you sure Barlog left Santa Monica?
No, I'm not. I was going to address that. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, he's still there, and he's still the director of God of War. I got confused because
someone else did. Shannon.
Yumi Yang, who was in the documentary, the Raising Kratos documentary, she was promoted up to the studio head.
Okay.
And I confused that with her taking over for God of War, so that was my fault.
Okay. And then there was another Shannon Studsill, who I don't...
I think she was the second in command in the Raising Kratos documentary.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And she left for Google, if I'm reading correct. Sorry, we shouldn't be doing this recorded. Anyway,
well,
okay.
First off, I'll say good, because she looked very stressed in that documentary.
Yes, she did. Everyone looked stressed. That was
yes.
the most stress I've ever been in a movie is that and No Country for Old Men. So what is that going to tell you? All right, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Microsoft has added a bunch of games with touch. No, how do I say this? Has added touch control. There we go. To a bunch of games and Game Pass's cloud lineup. Games include Gears 5, Sea of Thieves, Celeste, Dead Cells, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. So all of them now with touch controls. So if you're playing on an iPad or whatever you're able to play on. So this isn't like a massive story, but I wanted to talk about it because we discussed last week about how Microsoft never had a handheld, and I'm pointing at Richard on my monitor because Richard was the guy that sort of brought it up. But so all right, would you want to use, let's say Halo Infinite comes out, right? Would you want to use touch controls? Like, how viable are touch controls for, or even like twitchy games like Celeste, right? Like, is that something you'd want to use touch controls for? I'm saying this never having used touch controls for Celeste, but I have used touch controls in general. And I don't know if it's something that I would want, but I sort of wanted your guys' perspective on that. And then we'll get to like the significance of it, but go ahead.
That's a good question. I feel like I do need some sort of tactile feedback on my, so you bring up Celeste, and Celeste is great, but I need to know when I press right or left, or, the jump. Well, the jump's not terribly important, but the right and left, like the directional, I really need to know for something that requires precision if I'm actually pressing those or not. Because I'm not looking at the button light up on my screen. I'm looking at, what my character's doing. I think it depends on the game.
Yeah,
I think it definitely depends on the game.
It's game to game. There are some of the games in that list, like Sea of Thieves. Sure, touch controls. That's fine.
Sure.
It's it's a floaty enough game, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, that you could give that touch controls and it's fine.
Driving games, Forza,
with touch
controls.
It's not. I guess it's not that big of a deal because you can plug in a controller anyway, right? In a lot of cases, which you should be doing anyway. So it's one of those things where I don't mean to sound like I'm saying this is dumb, because it's not. It's great that they're doing it. It's just interesting to me because I wonder how many people are going to utilize it, right? Like, how many people are going to want to play Gears 5 with touch controls? Like,
it's nice to have the option.
I think it's more of that thing. Nice to have the option. And I wonder, like, what does it do for people with disabilities or what have you. I think that's the more interesting discussion, which unfortunately I just can't give weight to because obviously I'm not in any of those communities or groups. But yeah, I guess that was all I wanted to. And I do think it's a good thing outside of that, because I agree with what I think is Microsoft, which when we have Phil Spencer on, we'll ask him. I agree with Microsoft's philosophy of you can play these games anywhere, but we still need a place where you can download them. Like, it's not going to be completely cloud-based. And that's what I reject with Stadia. So that's why I'm really in favor of Microsoft going crazy with iCloud or xCloud. There's too many clouds. Because I think that is great to be able to play whatever game wherever you are. But I still want one that's not dependent on my internet connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Go ahead, Connor.
The accessibility of being able to have touch controls if worse comes to worse. That's just a good, like, security net to have for your games, because at the end of the day, then, hey, you're, out doing something, you want to play some, or you're just doing something, you want to play some, like, Gears 5, and you can't find your controller. Hey, I can still use, touch controls. It's good. It's a good option to have. Good job, Microsoft.
Yeah, I think good to have is probably is the better way to put it. Yeah. Okay. All right. One more story I want to talk about. I want to preface this story with, well, you know what? We'll just talk about it, and then I'll. What's the postfris? What's the antonym for preface? I don't know. Okay. According to a source, Kojima is in talks with Microsoft for publishing their next game. This is according to GameBeat's, not our source, obviously. This is according to GameBeat's Jeff Grubb, who cited a source familiar with the matter. Rumors started to swirl after the trailer for a game called Abandoned was revealed, and people thought it might be like a, creepy, secret Kojima game like Silent Hills was, which, yes, Konami, we still remember Silent Hills exists, and we will always remember it exists. Grubbs says that's not the case, even though because Kojima is in talks with Microsoft. So Abandoned has nothing to do with Kojima, but according to this... Now, the reason that I wanted to preface it is just because it is one source, not to soil the name of Jeff Grubb, but it is one source, but it could be Kojima. I don't know. I feel a little uncomfortable talking about it, but I feel like we've sort of...
Just rumor, guys. This is a rumor.
I think we've covered that bit enough that I'm comfortable that, hey, grain of salt. I think this passes our test. Like, it's not just some crazy rumor. GamesBeat's a good outlet. It's not like this is a forum post on Reddit somewhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was I? Oh yeah. So this is the only thing I wanted to say about this.
Post face.
Thank you. I think Kojima's next game, Kojima Productions' next game, is going to be relatively safe is one word, but I think that safe, also in your mind then is like mediocre and uninspiring. And I don't necessarily mean that. I mean, like, between Metal Gear 2 and 3, Metal Gear 3 was like the more...
Safe.
See, I hate the word safe, though. What's the word? I'm trying to think of the word.
Less experimental.
Less experimental, was more streamlined, I guess. Conventional. There. Metal Gear 3 was more conventional.
Good word.
I think... Not that I think it should. I think Kojima Productions should just do whatever the hell they want and then just deliver a mind fuck like they did with Death Stranding again. Because there isn't a game like Death Stranding before, and I don't know if we're ever going to get another one like it after. And there's something of value to that. But I do think after Death Stranding, it was like, okay, dude, we gave you all this money, we gave you a gigantic studio, a huge marketing, deal and all that. Can you not just make a game about a superhero or whatever? So I think that the next game is going to be relatively conventional, which is the better word. And yeah, I listen, if they get Microsoft to publish it, then more power to them. And I think that's great. And if it's an exclusive, that would be even more interesting. But especially since Death Stranding's on PC. You guys go ahead. That was my takeaway from the situation.
I could see this happening. The rumors stated that it's due to Microsoft trying to get more of a foothold in the Japanese region, and yeah, I could definitely see it happening. I mean, I don't think Kojima has any sort of like loyalty to Sony. They just were the ones who gave him the money, So throughout all these years, especially after Konami, because Konami was the one that was with Sony, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I think Microsoft, just a quick segue, has been doing actually a really, strangely enough, really good job at catering to Japanese audiences. They have every Final Fantasy on the system now. They have every Kingdom Hearts on the system now. They are the only other console that has Octopath Traveler on their system. Like, it was exclusive to Switch, and now it's on Xbox.
I did not
Xbox
know that.
One.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so I think that they are doing very well in that instance, and obviously with the Bethesda deal, they want to throw this money around. So yeah, no, and I agree with you. I think the next game from Kojima Productions will be a lot safer. But yeah, no, we'll see what happens if it happens.
Connor, anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, if I'm Microsoft, if I'm Phil Spencer in a sweet blazer,
of course,
and I want a game with Kojima, and I want it to break, I want to hit everything. I want Kojima, I want a great Microsoft game, I want it to break into the Japanese market, and I want it to kill in the American market. PT.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Another. And I think there have been rumors or speculation that the next game would be a horror game.
Yeah,
that's where my mind goes, because it wasn't that it was a mess. It was just it was the playable trailer, and then it was taken down, and people still talk about it.
Yeah,
PT is still. It may not be on the forefront of the gaming community, but people still talk about PT on occasion, and people want PT. It may not be, right up there in the front, but if tomorrow Microsoft releases, a trailer and it just, it's PT but not PT, it's just what Kojima wanted to do with it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna kill. It is going to get.
People would be
Microsoft
really excited. Yeah,
yes.
You're making a really good point. Yeah, this is a really good point. I 100% agree with you. Yeah.
So whatever Microsoft does, they need to be doing that with Kojima.
Yeah, could you imagine how Connor? No, this is a really good thought. Because could you imagine how crazy people would go if Microsoft debuted a horror trailer and then at the end it was Kojima Productions or whatever, and the game was essentially, blink, blink, not Silent Hills. Yeah. That would be a really big deal. I think you're on the money. If I'm gonna bet, yeah. Thank you, Connor.
I mean, you have the man himself willing to work with you, and you have the game that never got published that people want. It's his game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Del Toro
it's
sort of
too perfect.
Del Toro sort of kind of helped
Yeah.
with Death Stranding. Why wouldn't he come back to it, to doing what they wanted to do? Because Del Toro is much more in. I haven't seen all of his movies, but a lot of his movies are sort of horror oriented.
They're horror adjacent.
Yeah, horror adjacent is, because I don't know if people would consider Pan's Labyrinth horror. Shape of Water is not necessarily horror, but it definitely has some scary elements to it.
Yeah, he really leans into the psychological and horror sides of things.
Yeah.
And right now, Microsoft has peanut butter and they have chocolate. They just got to put them together.
What was I gonna? Oh, and you know what? Not to dampen the mood here, but you know what the most infuriating thing of all this would be? Let's say they announce a Silent Hills looking game. People are going nuts, right? It's just it's angelic cheers throughout the land because Kojima's making a horror game with Del Toro. It's going to be published by Microsoft and all that. You know what the most infuriating thing of all this is? Konami won't give a shit. They will not care. It will not register in their minds that they will know it's a missed opportunity, but Konami is the guy from Kung Pao that thinks if he's bleeding, he's winning the fight. So like they'll think that for whatever reason they won because this game's exciting, and that
Konami is the toxic bitter ex.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else we like? Oh, do we have tidbits?
Yeah, we got a couple.
We got a couple tidbits for Richard. Richard, go ahead.
I'll try to go very quickly here. But speaking of Microsoft and trying, speaking of Microsoft and trying to get a foothold in Japan, Microsoft has hired two VTubers, Shishiro Botan and Himemori Luna, to advertise Xbox Game Pass in Japan. Shishiro herself plays a lot of Western titles, first-person shooters. She plays Apex Legends. Both VTubers generate over 500,000 views each, so that may be a good pickup for them.
Yes.
A playable prototype of a canceled Castlevania game, Castlevania Resurrection, has reared its head in a YouTube video. Castlevania Resurrection was a Dreamcast game that was being developed, fully 3D Castlevania, featuring the first female protagonist for the Belmont clan, technically second, whatever, doesn't matter. It had an accessible debug menu, and the person who was on the video played a couple of levels, took some damage from some enemies, but we've never seen this game in action besides people at E3 back in 1999. We've only had concept arts and a small 30-second trailer throughout all these years, so it's nice to see some actual footage of that game. Death Stranding did very well on PC, making about $27 million. It was released in July of 2020, and Death Stranding did significantly better than releases like Ghost Runner and Control, according to 505 Games. So, great for Death Stranding. Mm-hmm. And Halo 3 has received a brand new map after a decade. Halo Master Chief Collection now has seasons, like Battle Pass type seasons, and as part of Season 6, Halo 3 received a new map called Waterfall, and the map was originally a part of Halo Online, which had beta tests in several regions around the world, but after its beta test in Russia, the project was canceled. You can only play this map in custom playlists and not public playlists, but hopefully they'll add that to the rotation sooner or later. But that's it for the tidbits.
How much do you hate Konami for not leaning into Castlevania?
I don't hate them that much.
You're
sorry, I don't have.
You're zen. You are a zen individual.
You know, the problem is because I don't know if using the word realist is a good way to explain it, but it's just I don't make the decisions. They do. What the hell can I do about it? You know,
Pragmatist.
Yeah.
You keep talking like that, I'm gonna give a Patrick Henry, give me Castlevania or give me death.
I run the risk if I beg and plead for a new Castlevania, I run the risk of them rushing one out and fucking it up. So I'd rather not have that.
And you have Bloodstained.
Yes.
You've got Bloodstained, and that one's good,
and
right?
I got Bloodstained. And Bloodstained turned out way better than Mighty Number 9 because I'm also a Mega Man fan. But Mighty Number 9 fucked that shit up. And now thanks to Mighty Number 9, I have stuff like Striker Gunvolt, which is way better than those games. Now I got Bloodstained.
Do you remember that trailer? Cry like an anime fan on prom night. Do you remember those trailers?
Fucking alienate your own fans, goddammit.
Don't you guys have fun?
Sorry, I haven't.
Speaking of alienating fans.
I just had an Obi-Wan Kenobi
idiots.
moment there where he's like, wow, Mighty Number 9. I haven't heard that name since before you were born.
I have to see it every day at my store. So.
Throwing some shade. People bringing it in.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I got copies on the wall. Anyways.
All right. Anything else we'd like to say before we close the podcast?
No, sir.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. Go check out the Alien Isolation video, a review of Paradise Lost, the video game, not the John Milton poem. will be on the channel soon.
Same difference.
Who knows? But I may review, what is it, 19th century poetry? I have no idea. 18th century. I don't remember when he wrote it.
Oh, that was 17th century, I think.
Oh, was it? Was it even? Yeah, I don't know anything about philosophy. Okay, anything after 1985 is ancient history that is like Romans, Egypt happened at the same time. We'll see you next year.
I think John Milton was 1600s. Next year.
No, see you next week.
What's going on?